Sneha Samyukta Harinam Sankirtan. Sneha means with affection. Samyukta means complete engagement. Full on. Fired up. And back home, back to Godhead in this one lifetime. Without any doubt that there really is Krishna. And they can be seen face to face and eye to eye by His grace, by His mercy. The only difficulty is how to change our character, how to upgrade our consciousness, our appreciation of Krishna. There's no doubt about Krishna. Krishna is a undeniable reality, but only because our vision is mundane, we might not be able to see Krishna, even when He comes to stand before us. Just like the old woman who was carrying a bundle of sticks. The old lady was carrying a bundle of sticks, and the bundle of sticks fell off her head. And she's going, "Oh Bhagavan, oh Bhagavan," and Lord Vishnu appears before her and asks, "Yes, what do you want?" And she's telling to Vishnu that, "Please put my bundle of sticks back over my head." So then Lord Vishnu picks up the bundle of sticks, puts it back on her head, and disappears. She didn't see, she didn't know, she didn't understand what valuable things she had offered. He asked, "What do you want?" She could have said, "I want Krishna Prema." And she could have said, "I want you." But instead she said, "I want you to please take this bundle of sticks so I can go on with my mundane activities." So we should, without any doubt, understand that Krishna is an experienceable reality. And it's especially experienceable if we will take shelter of the holy name. Take shelter of the holy name as your only business. Because in Kali Yuga especially, Kali Kali Nam Rup Krishna Avatar. The main manifestation of Krishna in this Kali Yuga is Nam, Krishna Nam. But because our vision is mundane, we don't appreciate it. Or at least we don't fully appreciate it. So we think that we take recourse to other programs than immersing ourselves in the chanting of the holy names, thinking that some other program is more important. Prabhupada is told that actually our only real business is to sit in the Dham and constantly chant the holy names of Krishna. But because you have no taste for this, therefore I'm pushing you for so many other engagements, like opening bigger temples. Because you have no taste for this. Vishaya Chadiya Shuddha Habimani Kabi Habi Herabo Sri Vrindavan. We're not seeing Sri Vrindavan because of this Vishaya, Bhavarog. Bhavarog means disease of materialism, which is causing the cataracts in our eyes. We cannot see things as they are. Therefore, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Mahadava, Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtan. This Sankirtan Jagya will help you to gain entrance into the relationship with Krishna. We can dance with Krishna in the rasa dance, if we so desire. It is quite possible. But only those who have purified their love for Krishna can participate in it. We should not take cheaply this gift of Krishna consciousness. But it is a matchless gift which has been bestowed upon suffering humanity, by the mercy of the Lord, this Krishna consciousness movement. It's quite possible to play with Krishna, to dance with Krishna, to cradle Krishna in your arms. The real Krishna, who is, Param Satyam. The supreme truth, supreme reality. It can certainly be done by Krishna's grace, by the grace of Nam. Don't underestimate the power of Nam. But Nam means Shuddhanam. If you're not chanting Shuddhanam, you should immediately, as soon as possible, start chanting Shuddhanam. It's a question of the direction of your attitude, your intentions. If you're chanting Nam with the expectations of karma and jnana, bhukti and mukti, with the hopes for bhukti and mukti. Bhukti, you understand? Sanskrit and mukti. If you chant Nam with that mood, then you will get bhukti and mukti. You won't get mukti, excuse me. Only bhukti. Even you desire mukti, but you will not get it. Because desiring to exploit the name for bhukti and mukti is an offense to the holy name. But if you don't desire bhukti and mukti, and you're chanting with the aim of purifying your heart from material contamination, without a desire to exploit the name, then that is called Abbas Nam. That Nam can give mukti. But you can chant Nam, Abbas Nam, with the aim of purifying yourself, freeing yourself from the anarthas, anarjana vritti, etc., for the rest of eternity, and never get Krishna prema. The only way that you can get Krishna prema, by the grace of Nam, is to chant Nam with the intention of pleasing Krishna. If you don't have the desire for pleasing Krishna, then by your chanting and by your life's every breath, if you don't want to live your life for the pleasure of Krishna, why am I chanting these 16 rounds? To please my Guru. Why am I performing Sankirtan Jagya? Please Lord Chaitanya, who is the Kali Yuga Jagya Purush. Like that. The attitude or the aim of pleasing Krishna has to be there in our mentality in order to augment Shuddhanam. Because pleasing Krishna is the principle as we started out with. Krishna Indriya Priti Ishchadvari Premana is the principle. Anukulina Krishnanushitanam. Anyabhilasi to shunyam means that there should be no other motive. But there should be the real motive. That there's no other motive is the touchsta lakshana of Uttama Bhakti. That there is the real motive of pleasing Krishna, following the principle of considering Krishna's satisfaction, what is favorable. Anukula bhajan. Will you please stop looking at your watch? So what? It's the state of affairs, the way I am. The way there's not enough time in the day. The way God made it. Why are there only 24 hours in the day? Why couldn't there be 48 hours in one day? But instead he's made it with only 24 hours. Anyway, I've taken up so much of your time. I've been withholding the tapes just to make you
make you listen.
To something. And actually, it's probably a selfish. Who am I to think that anybody would be interested to hear anything I have to say about anything? But to be real, we should never underestimate the power of Shuddhanam. Shuddhanam, which is Nam chanted for the pleasure of Krishna, can give you prema. So how important it is, Hare Krishna, how important it is for us to be chanting Shuddhanam. We're not supposed to be chanting Aparadnam. We're not supposed to be chanting Abhasana. How many millions of lifetimes are we going to remain on the clearing stage of chanting? Clear away your anarthas and get to the real business. The real business is to chant for the pleasure of Krishna. As a matter of fact, it's not really our real business. Our focus should not be on clearing away the anarthas. Our focus should be on pleasing Krishna. Just like when you pour milk into the cup of ink, because the density of this amrit milk is greater than the density of the ink, which is like poison. By pouring the amrit into the stock of poison, the poison is driven out. To the degree that you fill your cup with ink, to that degree the poison is filled. It is driven out. So the point is to fill your cup with ink. If you're in the inky atmosphere of Kali Yuga, which is full of the ink of sense gratificatory propositions, if you try to simply take out the ink, there's every chance the ink will go back in. You have to replace the negative substance of sense gratification with the positive substance of devotional, let's say, pleasure-giving desires. So to cultivate the desire to please Krishna is called sadhan bhakti. The attitude. It's not what we do. We're back to this point. It's not what we do, but it's the attitude with which we do anything. Just like we made the point of Rukmini sleeping with Krishna, Radharani sleeping with Krishna. But there's an ocean of difference between the attitude. Krishna condescends to sleep with Rukmini to fulfill her desires to see her husband, to embrace her husband, etc. But in Braja, the unalloyed devotion of Radha and her girlfriends and all the residents of Vrindavan is such that it's not that they want to associate with Krishna, but because their unalloyed devotion is so attractive, Krishna wants to associate with them. Krishna wants to sleep with Radha, and Radha condescends to fulfill Krishna, to sleep with Krishna, to fulfill his desires, to give himself to his beloved Radha. Krishna is the beloved of Rukmini, but Radha is the beloved of Krishna. You understand? So there's a vast difference. The same thing, it may look like the same thing. You know, just like it may look like that the dancing of young boys and girls and the dancing of Radha and Krishna and the gopis are the same. But it's totally different. One is based on kam. Atmindriya priti vanchi tari bali kam. To have the desire, the aspiration, the intention of gratifying one's own senses, or satisfying one's own senses, or pleasing one's own senses, or serving one's own senses. Atmindriya. Atma indriya priti. Indriya means senses. Atma indriya priti. Priti means to give pleasure to. One's own senses. This constitutes kam, or lust. And Krishna indriya priti, ichcha. Ichcha means desire, to have the desire to satisfy the senses of Krishna. This constitutes prema. Dari premana. You see. So the same thing is looking like the same thing, but because the attitude is totally different, the objective is different, so therefore there's a gulf of difference between the two things. So in this way, we should understand that there's a gulf of difference between the attitude of exploiting the holy name for material sense gratification. House and a car and a color TV. Jai Jagadisha Hari. No comments, please, on the peanut gallery. And we call them comments. So there's a vast difference between, this attitude of taking the holy name for the purpose of getting some profit, adoration, and distinction. Just like many times people do kirtan for the purpose of being respected by people, or being adored by the ladies, or whatever. Profit, adoration, and distinction. Name and fame. Sukha erabishta. In Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's Vaishnav K poem, song, he says, Jada era pratishta, sukha era bishta. Jadera pratishta. Jadera pratishta means for worldly reputation. This desire for worldly reputation, to be recognized as a great Sankirtaniro, a great Kirtaniya, Kirtankari. I'm wonderful, something wonderful. Everybody just see how nicely I'm singing, like a Rakshasa. What does Rakshasa mean ultimately? It means man-eater. I'm singing very nicely, like a spider, waiting for the fly to enter his trap, the trap of his web. I'm setting out my kirtan as a web to trap, and exploit, for fulfilling my various sense gratificatory desires. In this way, I become a diabolical fiend. Sinister. A sinister wretch.
Sounds like a vampire.
Vampire. Yes. Posing myself as a kirtaniya. Imposter. Exactly.
Quack.
Just like people think that it's a very righteous thing to do, to pose himself as an imposter husband of a so-called gopi. Actually, in the material world, the material disease is everyone is thinking that they're the enjoyer, the Purusha. In order to imitate God, we have to have our Prakriti, we have to have our Radha, and our many gopis, in order to really imitate God in Parakya Ras. The perverted reflection of Parakya Ras in this world is the most abominable let's say, departure from the original seva bhavana of the soul. Therefore, it is considered to be sinful. Sin means to depart from the original seva bhavana of the soul. That is the actual meaning of sin. To the degree that you depart from the original seva bhavana of the soul, in other words, what is the original seva bhavana of the soul? Is as Prakriti, the enjoyed servant of Godhead. And the more we depart from that means the more we try to imitate the enjoyer, or try to usurp the position of God as the enjoyer of the pleasure potency of Krishna. So just like in the Swakiya Ras, those who are married are basically imitating the Swakiya Ras of Krishna. So theirs is not as sinful. Don't mind. They're not as sinful as those who are trying to imitate the Parakya Ras of Krishna in the material world. Generally, the attraction between man and woman in this material world is based on sense gratification. It is not so pure as the ladies and gentlemen who are strolling in the gardens of Vaikuntha-loka, both of them serving Narayan nicely. This is wishful thinking, in Kali Yuga especially. That anyone manifesting such, you can say, masquerade, make show of man and woman relationships in this material world, that we are thinking of ourselves as being. We try to come to that platform, but mostly there's degrees of contamination of the lust for Atmendriya Priti Vancha. Atmendriya Priti means desire for satisfaction of our own senses in the matter. It's so much mixed in. It's very difficult to extricate ourselves from that mentality of being the lord of this female form. In the material world, the female form as Maya, is the direct manifestation of Maya to captivate the minds of men who are having the disposition of being the enjoyer or the lord of the female form. You see, the husband. How much Maya it is for us to think that we are husband of the Sri Roop. The original Sri Roop is in the spiritual world, and that is in the form of Radha and the gopis, Rukmini and Lakshmi, etc. These are original manifestations of the Sri Roop. Radha is the Sri Roop who expands. Sri means to expand. So Radha expands the empire of Krishna's pleasure pastimes. Whereas in the material world, the so-called Sri Roop, the perverted Sri Roop in this material world, expands the empire of sense gratification for the conditioned soul, which is simply to entangle him more and more in conditional life. We should always see all women as Krishna's gopis. This is Prabhupada's instruction, that the men should see all women as Krishna's gopis. Set aside Chanakya sloka, where he says that one should see all women except for his wife as mother. All women are representative forms of the original form. Just like when you see, if you will see like this, then you will be able to get out of the entanglement of the Grihastha ashram and proceed. And also, it will be easier for you to let's say, refrain from illicit sex with the wife, which happens sometimes in the Grihastha ashram. Because there's the tendency to think that she is for my enjoyment. You see, out of conditional consciousness, one may think like that. Due to that enjoying spirit, which is the disease condition, this bhava rog within the heart, we may think like that. That this form is meant for my enjoyment. Actually, this form, the real truth is that this form of the woman within this material world is meant to remind us of Radha. But we're so fooled that we're thinking that this form is meant for my exploitation. The form of the woman in this material world is meant to augment, to remind us of Radha. If we allow the form to remind us of Radha, it's just like, see the hand, the shadow of my hand. When you see the shadow of my hand, then will you try to relate with the shadow of the hand, or will you try to relate with the hand? Just like when there's an airplane flying over, and you see the shadow of the airplane running on the ground. What do you do? Do you run after the shadow? Think, whoa, what is this, man? Amazing. This dark, shadow is going on the ground and running after the shadow, try to associate with the shadow, relate with the shadow. When you see the shadow, what do you do immediately? You look up to see what is, isn't it? Usually this is the, a sensible person will do it. As soon as he sees the shadow, then he looks up to see the substance which is the cause of the shadow. He relates the shadow to the substance immediately. It's second nature. As soon as you see the shadow, then immediately you relate the shadow to the substance. So Maya and the Mayic forms within this world are the shadow representations of the substance of the spiritual world. So when you see the Mayic form within this material world, you should immediately relate it to the substantial form of the spiritual world. Just like when you see the Mayic manifestation of Madhurya Ras in this material world as the relationship between man and woman, immediately that should remind you of Adi Ras within the spiritual world. Just like you see some licentious billboard on the side of the road, because they're very fond, the materialists are very fond of using the sex impulse, as a suggestive way of selling their product. You understand? So they do like that, but when we see it, are we to be agitated materially? Just like one time Srila Prabhupada in New York, we were walking on the beach, in the park, and then he looks up and he sees a sign, and says, "Oh look, Golok." What did the sign say? Do you think that the sign said Golok? No. The sign said Coca Coca Loca Loca Coca Loca Coca Loca Coca Loca Coca Loca Coca Coca Loca Coca Cola Goloka Cola. Just the configuration of the word, of the letters in the word, was similar enough to the word Golok to remind him of Golok. Instead of seeing Coca-Cola, he saw Golok. So, by suggestion, it is not a difficult thing to relate that which is suggestive of reality to the reality itself. So, why we should not see the form of the woman as the representative ambassadress from the empress of the empire of Braja. That form of the woman originally comes because Radha is Mool Prakriti. She is the original source of all manifestations of Prakriti, of which Maya Shakti is one. There's nothing within this world which isn't Prakriti. All we see is Prakriti. The cloud in the sky is a manifestation of Prakriti. The atom bomb is a manifestation of Prakriti. The tree is a manifestation of Prakriti. All we're seeing is Prakriti. The dictaphone is Prakriti. The microphone is Prakriti. The printing press is Prakriti. What is Prakriti? Prakriti is that which is enjoyed by Purusha. So everything is a manifestation of Radha's expanded energy for the purpose of giving pleasure to Krishna. If we recognize that point, then there's the question of Yukta Vairagya. by applying this principle that because this dictaphone is a manifestation of Prakriti, which originates in Radha. Aradhanam means to give pleasure or to worship Krishna through loving service. So because this is an expanded form of Radha, therefore this expanded form of Radha is meant for serving the purposes of Radha. What is the purpose of Radha? To give pleasure to Krishna. So in this way, when you will see the form of the woman, instead of thinking that the form of the woman as Mayak means it is separated from Krishna, know that that which is appearing to be separated from me is it is the effect of my illusory energy. But Maya is only having the effect of Mahamaya when we are seeing without proper knowledge. It's just like the example Prabhupada gives is that that the child is if you give a pencil to a child, then what will the child do with the pencil? Immediately, the child will start chewing on the pencil. Now, is the pencil for chewing? You see? But the child is thinking that the pencil is for chewing. But for someone who has knowledge of the actual utility of the pencil, the purpose of the pencil, then he's not going to be using the pencil as a teething ring. But rather he's going to be using the pencil as bugs. You know, but rather he'll be seeing the thing for what it actually is. Just like an ordinary man, Prabhupada gives another example, that an ordinary man will, when he sees a fruit tree, immediately he thinks of the fruit tree in terms of his sense gratification. That, oh, here's some nice fruits, let me eat. And he picks the fruits and he eats them. A scientist, when he sees a fruit tree, or a botanist, when he sees a fruit tree, then what he will see is that this is such and such. I'm not a botanist, so I can't quote any Roman names of or what is it called? Italian, I guess. Names. You know.
Latin.
Latin, yes, Latin names. Scientific terminology. Sounds like big words, you know, for people. You know, so it's easy to bluff them. You know, rascals. Nonsense. You know, anyway, but so they will see things, you know, that you know, botanically speaking, this is such and such a kind of tree, or whatever. You know, and they'll analyze, and then a chemist will analyze that this tree is a configuration of various molecules, you know, comprised of this element and that, you know, and then, you know, the physicist will say that there's so many nuclear reactions going on, you know, which comes in the form of a tree or whatever, you know. But a devotee, when he sees a tree, he will be seeing that the tree is actually the energy of Krishna, which is, and there's a spirit soul within the tree who is part and parcel of Krishna, and as Jiva, he is eternally servant of Krishna. So why not engage this Jiva who has this tree body in some service to Krishna, you know, by allowing that energy of Krishna, which he's been endowed with, you know, to be engaged in the service of Krishna. So then he picks the mango and he takes it and offers it to the deity for the pleasure of the deity. And he sees the tree as an opportunity, a facility to augment his Krishna consciousness and to augment the Krishna consciousness of the poor jiva who's suffering in the body of the tree. Because Prabhupada told that if a tree offers the fruit, then then that tree gets a chance for a human life in his next life. So to facilitate the advancement of that living entity to the spiritual platform, the devotee, mercifully picks the fruit and offers it to Krishna, and then distributes the prasad, for the benefit of, other fallen human souls, and honors a little bit for the proper mentality, for his own spiritual advancement. So in this way, he sees a tree, So because he sees that it has its connection with Krishna, So how to become freed from the attraction between man and woman is not a difficult thing. It's a very simple thing. Of course, it means that we have to be interested to give up the prospects of sense gratification as the goal of life, and understand that there's need, to progress, to the realization of the principle of prema, which is based on, the ideal of pleasing Krishna, So in that way, it's not difficult if we will understand that Radha is for the pleasure of Krishna. These other girls that we're seeing about us, they're all manifestations, or expanded forms of Srimati Radharani. Actually, we can hardly expect that these gopis will not be beautiful. Gopis are supposed to be beautiful, for Krishna. The beauty is meant for the pleasure of Krishna, and so all beautiful women should be induced to engage themselves in the service of Krishna. So we will canvass and accept all beautiful women as part and parcel, or parts, especially Vaishnavis. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is instructed that we should see all Vaishnavis as partial manifestations of the pleasure potency of Krishna. All Vaishnavis should be seen in that way. Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he instructed that very good, that you've entered into the Grihastha ashram, that's the best thing you could have ever done. Now, you install the deity in your house, you make sumptuous offerings to the deity, and then you take the deity, the prasadam of the offerings, and you offer it to the wife. Radha and Krishna's prasadam you offer to their Sakhi, the wife, understanding that the wife is the Sakhi of Radha and the maidservant of Lord Krishna, and then you accept the remnants of your wife's prasadam, and in this way you'll learn how to serve a Vaishnava. In this way, we'll understand the principle, and rather than trying to exploit, rather we'll see that she's not an object of enjoyment, but she's an object of service. And the best service we can do for her is to help her to progress to the ultimate goal of life, which is to eternally engage in the loving service of Radha and Krishna. And the best way that we can do that is to ourselves progress to the ultimate goal of life, of eternally engaging in the service of Radha and Krishna. You see? So it's very important to understand that why it is that we're looking at the things the way we're looking at. It is due to material contamination. But even before we're completely free from material contamination, even for the novice or the beginner transcendentalist, they are enjoined, as you'll read in the second canto of Bhagavatam, they are enjoined to see the Virata Rup as relating to a personal form of Godhead. In other words, instead of simply looking at the material world as a domain for a pandemonium of sense gratification, the aspiring transcendentalist should try to see that in a modified pantheistic way, that this material world is actually a form of the personality of Godhead. That the stacks, that the mountains are the stacks of bones, that the grasses are the hairs on the body, and trees are the hairs on the body. The clouds are the hair in the sky. You know, just like Prabhupada, the same principle. Prabhupada purports this raso. What is it? What was it? Rasap Sukanti.
Rasoham Apsukanteya?
Yeah, Rasoham. Yeah, Rasoham Apsukanteya. That I am the taste in water. He says that the impersonalist, he will try to understand speculatively how this taste in the water is Krishna, or is the absolute truth. But the personalist, he will be thinking in a different way. He will not think that how this taste of water is Krishna, but he will think that Krishna, the person Krishna, is so kind that he is supplying this nice water to quench man's thirst. So this water becomes a manifestation of the mercy of Krishna, in order to appreciate and understand that Krishna is a compassionate entity. You see. So in this way we understand that there's a personality, and he's a wonderful personality, a nice personality, very kind and compassionate, you know, and that way we gain entrance into appreciation of Krishna's personality, or God's personality. So, you know, in the same way, rather than seeing the hair, when we see the clouds in the sky, you know, and that this is the hair on the body of the universal Lord, you know, and then rather than seeing that here's a sun, a big bright eye, you know, and that this is a moon, which is a winking eye. It's opening and closing, you see. Just like we're getting a little sleepy now, so our eyes are opening and closing. So because we're getting late, we should stop this nonsense talk. but anyway, you know, you can imagine, you know, trying to figure out what kind of God is this anyway, that's having a big bright eye and a cool winking eye, you know, and fluffy, you know, sometimes turning black and sometimes turning white, you know, and fluffy and sometimes cirrus clouds and cumulonimbus clouds, you know, where we have cirrus hair and cumulonimbus hair, you know, and like, you know, what kind of, you know, with, you know, bones, you know, mountain-like bones and you know, these tree-like hairs on the body, you know, so, what a weird God this is, you know. But no, you know, this is a very immature, neophyte, you know, and impersonal conception, you know, of the universal form of God. But rather, instead of trying to figure out why God is having this kind of hair, big billowy hairs, you know, when you see the cloud in the sky, you know, instead of trying to imagine, you know, what kind of universal, you know, body of God this is, when you see the cloud in the sky, you're reminded that Krishna, you know, is known as Keshava, who has beautiful, dark, curly hair with a bluish tint. Reddish tint. You know, clouds in the sunset. Reddish tint, you know, hair. You know, like that. When we see the cloud in the sky, and when we see the trees, then we can be reminded how that these trees represent the hair on the body. So when you see the tree, then you can be reminded of the hairs on Krishna's body, which at his Kaishur age, when Krishna is at his Kaishur age, the hairs start to become more prominent, which excites the hearts of the gopis, because they know that now he's coming to the mature, let's say, as a first class transcendental debauchee, you know, and he will be able to augment, you know, his pleasure pastimes in an unprecedented way, you know, with Srimati Radharani and her girlfriends, like that. You know, so in this way, if we can see practically that, in the very elementary, chapters of the Bhagavatam, which is basically the lotus feet of the Lord, first and second canto of the Bhagavatam, in the ABCDs of spiritual life, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this idea that you can relate something which is a manifestation of this so-called mundane world, which is actually not a mundane world because it has its eternal connection with, or its profound connection with Krishna. That if we can relate the things of this world with the supramundane reality of the original spiritual feature in the spiritual world, then certainly it's not such a far-fetched concept that we should be able to, relate. I mean, after all, how can you not recognize that the woman, that the female form is the ambassadress, just like the policeman is coming from the law, from the government. They bang on the door and said, "Open up,"
in the name of the law.
In the name of the law, and then everybody throws their marijuana out the window, and says, "It's the law, it's the law." But is it the law? It's just a man. It's not the law. The law is in the book somewhere in the city hall or something. The law is made up, and is being enforced. It's the law enforcement agent of the government. So but when you see the law enforcement agent, you see the law. You understand? So in the same way, what the law enforcement agent has a uniform by which you can recognize, right? And that's a difficult idea. So similarly, the ambassadress, just like the ambassador is coming, probably gives this example. I'm extending a little bit to say that there's an ambassadress, because after all she's in a female form, so we should call her an ambassadress, not an ambassador. So it just probably gives the example that, like, when the ambassador comes from a king to another country, then if the other king in the other country respects nicely, and offers a acknowledge the principle of allegiance to the purposes of Radha in the matter of giving pleasure to Krishna. To give us facility for advancing in our spiritual life by augmenting our Krishna consciousness. So this form of the woman will no longer act as Mahamaya, but will act as Yogamaya. Because the form of the woman will serve to remind us of Radha, and serve to remind us that Radha is meant for the pleasure of Krishna. And this nice ambassadress, beautiful young girl, has come before me to remind me of all these things and help me to make advancement in devotional service. So from within the core of my heart, I offer my Dandavat Pranam to her, with the understanding that my respect to her, as not as an ordinary mother of this material world in Kali Yuga, Muhammad had to give instructions like, don't go to bed with your mother, don't have sex with your mother. So such kinds of mentality are there. Prabhupada said that for a lusty man, even a hole in the wall looks good. Even a chicken looks good. So what to speak of the mothers? A lusty man he may naturally lust after his own mother. Even in so-called civilized society, they're doing all kinds of abominable nonsense. So when it says to regard all women, as mother, it means Srimati. We should take it like that. To regard the Mata means mother. Srimati means the supreme, not supreme mother, but it's a way of addressing the mother, just like Srimati Rukmini Devi Dasi, or Srimati, Hari Krishna Devi Dasi, Sriman, Aindra Dāsa, Sriman Ram Roy Das. So Srimati. So just as Srimati, why are we naming them Srimati? Why we call them Srimati? So that we can remember that they're associated with Radha's form. That they are servants of Radha. They're servants of the Antaranga Shakti of Krishna. They're meant to be respected as such. And in this way, we'll never think to exploit them. As soon as you think to exploit, just like the judge is impartial, it's not the judge that binds us, to prison life. But if the judge sees by evidence that you're guilty, then you're bound. If judge sees by evidence that you're innocent, then you're free. So in the same way, the agents of the government of Srimati Radharani, they will know immediately, because Super Soul is there. Wherever Shakti Mat is, Shakti is also there. So they will know immediately that whether or not you're having a criminal mentality, Kirachur, whatever, both are criminal. If you're having a criminal mentality of trying to usurp the position as the husband, when actually Krishna is the only husband, in reality. Krishna is the supreme husband of every living entity. So if we're having that mentality, then immediately we're bound. Not by the agent of, but the real thing that binds us is our own desires. Just like Ravana. Ravana was not exactly killed by Ram's arrow. Nor was he killed by Sita Devi. It wasn't because of Sita Devi that he was killed, nor was it because of Ram that he was killed, but it was because of his own nefarious mentality. So in that way, it is our desires that are binding us. Prabhupada gives the example of how to catch a monkey. The coconut, you hollow the coconut, put some chana, chickpeas inside, and you tie that coconut, to a tree. And then when the monkey comes along, and foolish as he is, fooling around, he notices that there's some chana inside. And then he squeezes his hand in and grasps the chana, and he cannot pull his fist out. Because he's so foolish, he's thinking that I want the chana. But it's due to the fact that he's attached to the desire of having the chana that he's bound. Give up the desire to have the chana, and you can pull your hand out. Prabhupada gives that example. That is due to our desires. By desire we've come to the material world, and by desire we can get out of the material world. So we have to change our attitude. Every one of us are suffering from an identity crisis. That identity crisis is having basically two psychological configurations. One is how we see ourselves, and the other is how we see the world around us. So we have to start seeing the world around. We have to start seeing ourselves differently, in a different light, and we have to see the world around us differently. This is Krishna's Prakriti. That roop is actually, that form of the woman, etc., is Krishna's form. And if we understand understand the form of Krishna's enjoyable, is meant for Krishna's service is not meant for me. I'm not Krishna. You know. So in this way, even with this type of, let's say, theoretical understanding, 50%, at least 50% of the battle is won. And by practice, it makes perfect. Gradually, we have to practice seeing things in the proper light. You know, and if we will try to practice seeing in this way, then it will help us to go a long way to become freed from the desire to exploit the opposite sex for sense gratification. Even to theoretically understand this, and to understand that this is quite a correct and true way of seeing this. This is not like the Sahajis, you know, who try to see Radha as a mundane living entity. The Sahajis try to bring Radha down to the mundane conception of womanhood. This is quite the antithesis of Sahaja, because we're not trying to bring Radha's form, Radha's Sri Swarup, down to the mundane conception of Sri, which is to expand the empire of material sense gratification, thinking that Krishna is a material sense gratifier, and then following in his footsteps by augmenting our material sense gratification in the association of young women, pretending to be Krishna, adopting the philosophy of monism, you know, that we're all Krishna type of mood. You see. But rather, we're not trying to bring Radha down to the mundane platform, but we're trying to see the connection that the mundane platform has with the reality, the mundane form of the woman has with the reality of Radha. It is not that we're trying to see the mundane in Radha. We're trying to see the supramundane in the shadow of Radha, or the reflection of Radha. You understand? So that is, we should never think that this is the foolish Sahaja type of mentality. But it is a real, tangible practice by which we can easily extricate ourselves from the influence of Mahamaya, you know, which makes us very much more fit for going back home, back to God. Hare Krishna. Jai Om Srīpād Aindra Dāsa. Babaji. I don't know why we started talking about that. We were supposed to be talking about, you know, how Prabhupada impressed me. But these are also ways that Prabhupada impressed me. Prabhupada impressed me by helping me to understand these things. Since I've had some amazing experiences since I've been in Vrindavan has its own power. You know, Vrindavan can bless by its own volition. You know, facilitate our transcendental experience, our progress. Very like that. Everything is dependent on the will of Krishna. Radharani is in charge here. We shouldn't doubt the potency of this talk. 16 rounds in Vrindavan is equivalent of 16,000 rounds anywhere else in the world to benefit you guys. No doubt. One 24-hour kirtan here is equivalent of having a 24-hour kirtan in 1,000 temples around the world, in any other place in the world. You know, so the magnitude of power, you know, is as God is immeasurable, as Radharani is immeasurable. The mercy is immeasurable. We cannot say that we have faith in Krishna unless we're willing to accept the inconceivable potencies of Krishna. There's no difference between Krishna and Vrindavan Dham. So we cannot say that we have faith in Vrindavan Dham unless we're willing to accept the inconceivable potencies of Vrindavan Dham. That's why Srila Prabhupada is enjoined that every disciple should come at least once a year to Vrindavan and Mayapur. And GBC men, preachers, and sannyasis should come to Vrindavan Dham at least 3 or 4 times a year, never mind the expense. That's Prabhupada's instruction. GBC men, sannyasis, and preachers should come to Vrindavan Dham 3 or 4 times a year, never mind the expense. In order to take advantage of the facility that Prabhupada has arranged, that Krishna has arranged, that Radharani has arranged, ultimately, for our advancement to the perfection of Krishna consciousness. We can see Krishna face to face, play with Krishna, dance with Krishna in the Rasa dance. You can actually do that. It's actually for you, not for the other guy. But it means that we have to take advantage of the facilities. If we neglect to take advantage of the facilities, just like Rupa Goswami in Mathura Mahatmya, I don't want to get off into much more conversation because it is getting quite late. But in Mathura Mahatmya, Rupa Goswami quotes, I think from the Padma Purana, where Krishna is telling that Kartik comes every year. And Mathura Mandala, this Braj Mandala, is not difficult to attain in this world. Still, the fools rot in the world of birth and death because they neglect to come to Braj Mandal in the month of Kartik. In the month of Kartik, 16 rounds equals 16 million rounds. Any other time of the year, 16 rounds equals 16,000 rounds. And if you're in San Francisco or in Poland somewhere, then your 16 rounds is equal to 16 rounds. But in Vrindavan Dham, 16 rounds any time of the year is worth 16,000 rounds. That much transcendental Sukriti points go into your transcendental bank account. Lakshmi points, Sukriti points. It goes into your transcendental bank account. Why it is that the cowherd boys were able to play with Krishna, it is explained, Shukadeva Goswami explains, because of Krita Punja Punya, heaps and piles of transcendental, accumulation of transcendental credits, Sukriti points, Punya points.
You mentioned the month, it is a Juba month.
That is Purushottam Mas, which is coming soon.
And it's more beneficial than Kartik.
It's the same potency, but the difference is that Radharani is so pleased that she, during this month, Purushottam Mas, which starts in the middle of May till the middle of June. During this month, Radharani doesn't consider any offenses committed in the Dham, in Vrindavan Dham. Usually the offenses in Vrindavan Dham are multiplied 1,000 times. And during Kartik, it's multiplied 1,000,000 times. The benefit is also multiplied 1,000,000 times. So when you come to Kartik, your best foot should be forward. You know, but in Purushottam Mas, you get the benefit of 1,000,000 times, you know, the devotional service without the axe over your head. You're just basically dependent on your transcendental intelligence, you know, to take advantage. You know, why do things which are not going to help you advance in devotional life? You know? So better to do things which are going to help you advance and get 1,000,000 times the benefit of doing those things, instead of engaging. One of the offenses of the Dham is to engage in mundane activities. You know, so why engage in mundane activities? Because you're not going to benefit by engaging in mundane activities. Engage in devotional activities. So such a great facility. Not given us means privilege. You know, not given us in the sense that we should take it for granted. He's giving to the extent that we're taking. You know. So we should take advantage. I don't know, you want to do the rest of the Dustin Braja?
Yeah.
You want one and you want?
One.
That other boy, where did he go? I guess he went to take the rest. Huh?
Yeah.
But he wanted one also, right?
What's that? I'm not sure.
Anyway, you can take one for him too. And just give a donation. Help the printing costs. It's our 24-hour kirtan cassette. If you want it.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Use some prasad, man. Use some prasad. Sorry I took up so much of your time. I wasn't planning on doing that. I'm sure you weren't planning on it either. That's the game problem. You always get big fat bog with big fat stomach.
Melancholy.
Person you got such a big fat.
Hare Krishna. So we're inspired.
I hope they're pleased, in spite of the fact that they haven't taken rest yet. What time is it anyway?
It's
Oh my
already
God.
tomorrow, I think.
No, tomorrow begins at sunrise.
middle of the night. Hare Krishna. Well, go find the honey. I got some honey. You obviously see that.
What? Those who criticize us are our best friends.
Well, that's on our side.
We should not forget the principle that we can satisfy all the leaves and branches of the tree by watering the root of the tree. And Srila Prabhupada, on one cassette I was just listening to in 1972 at Radha Damodar Temple in this Nectar Devotion series. So he gives the definition of sincerity. Actually, we have to be sincere. Or what sincerity means, Prabhupada says, sincerity means to have the desire to please Krishna. And anything but that is insincerity. So if someone has the desire to please Krishna, then that desire to please Krishna will naturally extend to all the leaves and branches. But we have to understand what is real pleasure to Krishna and what is real pleasure, or what is the real satisfaction of the self-interest of every part and parcel of Krishna. So it's necessary for us to understand that the best thing that we could do to help to augment the exchanges of love between one devotee and the other is to develop our love for Krishna. To go to be actually aspiring seriously for augmenting ascending to the stages of prema bhakti.
When you see the face of a devotee who's ecstatic and who's very much fixed in his service to his spiritual master and Krishna, it enlivens you in your own life. So I agree that if we ourselves become more and more Krishna conscious, then by our very appearance and our very existence will help all those who are struggling within this material world. So this was what Srila Prabhupada showed us by his personal behavior. Everyone was very happy to be sitting at his lotus feet and felt fully protected and didn't have any other desire other than to fulfill his wishes. And his wishes are expressed in his teachings. And he wished that all devotees would gather together, chant the holy name, spread this Krishna consciousness movement. And this way,
And develop love of Godhead.
develop love of God. Well, yes. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Be good, but
I would like to hear a little discussion on the difference between this idea as you were expressing it and the professional recitation of Bhagavatam, for example.
No, that's...
Because this should be clarified, because otherwise people will think that they have the right to demand remuneration for their services, etc. Can you please...
Well, Prabhupada was categorically opposed to any professional recitation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This Bhagavad Sapta, Ramayan readings and so on like this. No, because there's no explanation. And also there's no bhakti. But as far as practicing devotional service, according to Guru, Shastra and Sadhu, certainly remuneration is there. Like, Prabhupada started life membership back in 1971. And certainly there was remuneration. Every time we met somebody, we would certainly encourage them to pay. At that time, of course, it was only 1,111 rupees. Today it's, 15,555? 14, but next year it'll go, I'm sure. Every year it's increasing. According to the devaluation of the rupee, you increase the value of the life membership. So that definitely is in order. And as far as any temple functions are concerned, it's also in order that there should be some remuneration. temple functions meaning, as I was saying, some yagyas or marriage ceremony. It's actually proper. It's proper. Just like when our temple was opened in 1975, all the brahmanas who installed the deities were not from ISKCON. No, there were no brahmanas from ISKCON who installed our deities. They were all from the local temples in Vrindavan. And at the end of that 7-day period, Prabhupada personally had me hand out envelopes with money to every single person who participated in that Pran Pratishtha function.
On the other hand, how far can we extend this idea? Because it seems like we could involve ourselves in allowing for wages for the pujaris, wages for the managers, wages for the, and then we become more or less another type of corporation.
Yeah. No, it's not that we should keep the deity just for making a living. It's not the deity. Actually, we're the servants of the deity. Krishna Balaram owns this temple. Krishna Balaram owns this land, just like all this land in this area of Ramanreti mainly belonged to Radharaman and Radha Gopinath. It belonged to the deity. It was always written in the name of the deity. All properties were always written in the name of the presiding deity. And the pujaris and the sevites, they were all servants of the deity. And you can also tell by, again, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, if something is proper or something is not proper. And the standard of deity worship, the standard of the understanding of Krishna, of Bhakti Yoga. I mean, I know you can say, well, there's like a fine line between, what's...
Well, it's just a question of whether the, just like, for example, in Bengal, Prabhupada has mentioned that these different kirtaniyas, they form a group and they travel around, for doing so-called kirtan jagyas, in a very artistic way and all this.
Yeah.
But and they may appear to chant the holy name. They may appear to be, let's say, ecstatically absorbed in Samkirtan Jagya, But if you will not give them X amount of dollars or X amount of rupees, they will not go to do the Jagya at your house. In other words, there's a demand for dollars and cents, or there's a demand for paisa, So it just seems to me that, to my understanding, that Brahmanas, they would live by dakshin.
Yes.
But they had no right to demand, that you must give X amount, otherwise I will not do this yogya for you. If you're not, just like when I started this kirtan program, Sarvabalana, who was at that time in charge of the restaurant and the guest house, he offered to pay, wages, so to speak, not as actually a dakshin, but for outside men to come to help us get the 24-hour kirtan started, because we didn't have so many men to start with, So he was offering like that, and it went on for a month, a month or so. But I had all kinds of people coming here. They'd sit down and do their kirtan act, and then immediately demand after their show was over. They would say, "How do you like me? Do you want me? And the first question, how much you going to give? Then they would tell, well, I'd say, well, I don't know, that I should, let's say, comply to your demands, for doing your kirtan. And then they would say, well, at Pagala Baba's ashram, they're giving 250 rupees a month, and at such and such ashram, they're giving this and that and the other, And they were expecting me to comply to a particular demand before they were willing to come and do kirtan, for Prabhupada's institution. So then there's a question of whether or not the intention is to do kirtan for glorifying the Lord with a selfless service attitude, or whether there's some motivation for maintaining
the status quo.
Well, I'll tell you what Prabhupada said in 70, this is in 75 also. He said that just like down the road there's this Siddharam ashram, and they were performing kirtan. They're doing their, Siddharam kirtan for at least 60 years. So that means they started in 1915. So Prabhupada said we should also have, he said we have 120 temples, and one devotee from each temple should come for 3 months, a 3-month stint. They should volunteer, they should come. So in this way we have 120 devotees rotating. And then you divide up the 24 hours and like this. So, but they should come and they will get purified. Not that we pay them to come, but they come. They come and this is their service. This is a devotional service. Voluntary devotional service. Not that we pay, we don't hire professional Sankirtaniers, they come here. No, this is mundane. There's a difference, of course, between paid employee and someone who's volunteering. Just like we do pay employees. There's so many accountants and administrators that are paid. The auditor is paid. Isn't it? I mean, that's the reality, that there are many people who are paid.
But are they getting benefit for doing devotional service by accepting that remuneration for their...
Well, they're paid employees. They're paid employees.
So how can they be called as
no, but I'm saying they're paid employees.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
There are devotees and there are paid employees. And the difference is that the devotees, they get some little maintenance, and the employees, they get a wage. They draw a wage. That's the difference. Very simple.
Yeah, anyway, if the maintenance is more than most people's wages in India.
Anyway, we can discuss privately.
Something should be said concerning, what one can do to please Lord Krishna during Purushottam Mass. What kind of vow one can take. There's many vows. If anyone wants to read the translation, at least, they can read it from me today or whenever, tomorrow. But there is mention of taking. There's unlimited benefit. One thing we should know about Purushottam Mass is that it's mentioned that the presiding deity is just like in Kartik, the presiding deity is Radharani. In Margashirsha, the presiding deity is Krishna. They are separating. They're having their separate months. But Purushottam Mass, the presiding deities, plural, is Radha Krishna, Yugal Murti. The Yugal Radha Krishna is a Yugal month. So both Radha and Krishna are the presiding deities of this Purushottam Mass. And also it is mentioned that there's 3 places to do this vrat, the best places to do this vrat. The best place is Radhakund. And if one cannot do it Radhakund, then anywhere in the forest of Braja. And otherwise, Purushottam Kshetra is the 3rd best place, Jagannath Puri. But the best place is Radhakund. Anyway, we're in the forest of Braja, and it is mentioned that also that Radharani is so pleased with someone who will do Purushottam Vrat in Braja, because she is the predominating deity of Braja Dham, and Radha and Krishna are together, so she's most happy, and she's most happy that they will be served together in this Purushottam Dham. That aside from blaspheming other Vaishnavas who will be doing the Purushottam Vrat, she is so pleased that she does not consider any other types of offenses which will be done in Brajadam. Just like Mayapur Dham, you don't get the reactions like you do here in Braja. In Braja, you get generally 1,000 times the benefit of your chanting and 1,000 times the reactions of your offenses. During Kartik, you get 1,000 times 1,000, which is 1,000,000 times the benefit of your chanting, but also you get 1,000,000 times the reaction to your offenses. But in Purushottam month, you get 1,000,000 times the benefit of your chanting
But Radharani is so pleased and kind upon anyone who does Purushottam Vrat in Brajadam that she doesn't consider the reactions to the offenses. So, except the reaction of blaspheming other Vaishnavas who are doing the Purushottam Vrat. There is a special hell for people who will blaspheme other Vaishnavas who will be doing the Purushottam Vrat during this month. So, it is mentioned also that it is very important and so much unlimitedly beneficial if one will take a holy bath during the Purushottam month. There's a story of a monkey, who was in previous life, he was a very greedy Brahmin. He happened to witness the ending ceremony to a merchant's Purushottam Vrat. One merchant was doing the Purushottam Vrat, and as a greedy Brahmin, naturally he came, hoping to get some bakshish or some dakshin or something. So he saw this this ending. So that was the only meritorious thing which enabled him to, in his next life, attain the merits of doing something pious during Purushottam month. So, but he was such a greedy Brahmin that all the villagers, they...
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.